In ancient Rome, 12,000 sea snails died to produce 1.5 grams of purple dye. A single robe dyed in Tyrian purple cost more than most families earned in a decade. Color was never decoration. It was a claim on power so absolute that emperors legislated who could wear it. And now, in 2025, artificial intelligence can generate logos in seconds, write positioning statements in minutes, and produce entire visual identities before lunch. But color remains the one branding decision that still requires a human being to sit in a room and decide what they believe. Everything else can be automated. This cannot. The question is why? Welcome to the Threads of Culture, a show that unpacks design, branding, and the cultural forces shaping the global stage. This episode argues that color became the last honest element of brand identity, not because it's the hardest to generate, but because it's the only one that still demands conviction. For most of human history, color was scarcity. The relationship was simple. If you could afford the pigment, you could afford the power. Tyrian purple for Roman senators. Lapis lazuli ground into ultramarine, reserved for painting the Virgin Mary's robe because the pigment cost more than gold. Color communicated hierarchy before language could. Then synthetic dyes arrived in the mid-19th century, and the equation inverted overnight. William Henry Perkin, an 18-year-old chemistry student trying to synthesize quinine in 1856, accidentally produced mauvine, the first synthetic aniline dye. Within a decade, anyone could wear purple. Color stopped being a gate and became a choice, but choices need organizing. So by 1963, Pantone had built a standardized color matching system that turned subjective sensation into reproducible specification. Suddenly, color could be owned, not just worn. Tiffany & Company trademarked a particular robin's egg blue, Pantone 1837, named for the company's founding year. The color preceded the product. It preceded the logo. If you described that blue to someone who had never seen the box, they would still feel the promise of luxury before you named the brand. When LVMH acquired Tiffany for $15.8 billion in 2021, they changed the advertising, the creative direction, the celebrity partnerships. They did not touch the blue. They couldn't. The blue was the acquisition. That story reveals something critical about what happened next. Between roughly 2015 and 2022, an entire generation of direct-to-consumer brands made the opposite bet. They let the data decide. Glossier, Casper, Hims, Outdoor Voices, Brandless, dozens of others. They all converged on nearly identical palettes. Soft pink, muted lavender, pale sage, warm neutrals. These weren't independent creative decisions. They were the output of the same optimization logic, the same Instagram conversion metrics, the same consumer research pointing toward approachable and friendly. The palettes performed well individually. Collectively, they produced a phenomenon the design press started calling blanding, a landscape where every brand looked like a sibling from the same focus-grouped family. The problem wasn't that any single palette was wrong. The problem was that optimization, by definition, converges on the median. And the median in color is invisibility. Color is one of the fastest signals a brand sends, faster than copy, faster than product photography, faster than anything a shopper has to stop and read. When every competitor occupies the same narrow band of the visible spectrum, that advantage evaporates. The DTC blanding era proved something the design industry had long suspected but never had to confront. Color chosen by committee, by data, by what tests well, stops being color at all. It becomes camouflage. Now extend that logic into 2025. AI-powered brand generators like Luca, Brandmark, and the design modules inside Canva and Adobe can produce complete visual identities in minutes. Run the same prompt 4 times. Ask for a skincare brand targeting millennial women. You will get 4 different logos, 4 different type systems, 4 different layout structures, and almost the exact same color palette. Muted, soft, safe. The algorithm is doing precisely what it was trained to do, synthesizing the statistical center of what has already worked. This is not a failure of AI. It is a revelation about what AI cannot reach. Layout follows spatial rules. Typography follows hierarchical logic. Copywriting follows linguistic patterns. All of these can be systematized, and systems can be learned. Color resists this. The same Pantone blue reads as clinical next to white, electric next to orange, melancholy next to gray. It reads as trustworthy in Chicago and as cold in Sao Paulo. It reads differently to a 22-year-old in Lagos than to a 55-year-old in Oslo. Color perception shifts across age, culture, religion, class, gender, and personal memory. Research from the University of Oregon and University of Cincinnati found that simply changing a grocery brand's logo to blue-green tones made consumers judge the company's ethical behavior more favorably, even when the company's actions were ambiguous. Color doesn't just reflect what a brand claims to value. It constructs the perception of those values in real time, below conscious awareness. An algorithm can generate a palette. It cannot tell you whether your brand should feel like dried terracotta or wet clay. That distinction is emotional, cultural, and irreducibly specific. It requires someone to sit with the discomfort of choosing something that cannot be validated by data, only by conviction. This is the hidden architecture of the current moment. AI has compressed the cost and time of every other identity element towards zero. The logo is minutes away. The type system is a slider. The brand voice is a prompt. What remains after all of that is the one decision that still costs something psychologically. The willingness to commit to a color that says who you are, at the risk of alienating everyone it doesn't speak to. Coca-Cola has held red for over a century, not because red tested better than blue, because red was a declaration that the brand knew itself and refused to negotiate. Pepsi, in the same period, has cycled through more than a dozen color and identity shifts, chasing relevance through reinvention. The market reads the difference instantly. Consistency in color is not stubbornness, it is confidence made visible. And confidence is the one thing a generative model cannot hallucinate into existence. There is, of course, a complication. Cadbury tried to trademark its signature purple in the UK and lost a protracted legal battle with Nestlé in 2013. The court ruled that a corporation cannot own a color in the broad sense Cadbury wanted. Consumers disagreed. Cadbury purple remains Cadbury in the collective imagination, regardless of what the law permits. This tension matters because it exposes the fragility of the argument. Color's power does not come from the brand that claims it. It comes from the millions of people who agree, without being asked, to associate a wavelength of light with a feeling. That agreement is cultural, not proprietary. It can be earned, but it cannot be manufactured, and it cannot be automated. Which means color's honesty is also its vulnerability. The moment a color becomes a trend rather than a conviction, it loses the very specificity that made it meaningful. Every brand that adopted millennial pink in 2017 borrowed a feeling without earning it, and the feeling dissipated the moment it became ubiquitous. So what remains, after the algorithms have finished generating, is not a technical problem. It is a philosophical one. Every other element of brand identity can now be produced without asking the fundamental question, who are you? Color still demands the answer, not because machines lack the capacity to suggest hues, but because a color chosen without conviction is just decoration, and consumers can feel the difference before they can name it. The 12,000 snails that died for a Roman emperor's robe were never about purple. They were about the willingness to pay a cost that proved the claim was real. Here is what I want to know. Think about the last brand you chose over a competitor. Not on price, not on reviews, on some inarticulate gut pull. What color was it? And did you ever stop to ask yourself why that mattered more than everything the brand actually said? I already know the answer. I just want to hear you say it. The next time you scroll past a brand and feel nothing, look at the palette. You will see exactly where the conviction ran out. Until next time, this has been The Threads of Culture.